Hello and welcome to Hammer Time, a Hammer horror podcast, part of the Evolution of Horror Network. I'm Becky Darke, a film critic and amateur, and I'm joined by my co-host, human encyclopedia of film and TV and Hammer superfan, Kevin Lyons. Kev, how are you today?
I'm a little under the weather, but I'm being a brave little soldier, and I will struggle through because I've got a slightly sniffly nose and a bit of a cough. Now, being a man, this is obviously a symptom of Ebola or something. So I'm
honestly, I'm just so sorry that you were on the verge of death.
I got myself off my deathbed, and I'm here for the sympathy more than anything else. Clearly, it's not working with you, but I'm hoping the listeners might think.
I know. Tough crowd.
Tough crowd. So my apologies if I sniffle a little bit occasionally. I'm going to try not to, but it might come upon me. So just brace yourselves for that. So.
In this podcast, Kevin and I are watching and discussing every horror film in Hammer's back catalogue. And this week, we are taking a big step forward from the Gothics to Hammer's psycho-thrillers with 1961's Taste of Fear.
A girl driven by terror to near insanity.
Our Hammer Time discussions are all spoilerific, and we go into plot details and chat about the endings of the films. So if you'd like to watch Taste of Fear before listening to this episode, this is another one you'll need to pick up on physical media. It's not, I couldn't find it anywhere on streaming at the moment, but you should pick this up because... Kev, this is a banger, right?
It is, and if I could recommend picking up the, if it's still available, the physical media version from Indicator in the UK, it's got a commentary track by some joker named Lyons. Which would serve as a sort of longer version of this. So
that sounds well worth the money. I might pick that up myself.
Excellent. Good. But yes, it's an absolute banger. This is a classic. This is. I cannot sing the praises of this film enough.
No, it's a great one. And we'll sort of come on to talk about why. But yeah, sort of spoilers up front.
Yeah.
We're fans of this one, right?
And more than ever, talking of spoilers, more than any other film we've done so far, we are going to give away major plot twists.
Yes.
And there are a lot of them in this film. It's a very twisty film.
Actually, it is.
So please, if you do plan on watching it, you haven't seen it yet, please go and watch it before you listen to this episode, because we will kind of ruin it for you in a lot of ways.
I think that's actually a really good point to make up front. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Probably out of all of the films that we have discussed so far, the spoilers would make the biggest difference with this one. So,
most definitely. So
I guess that brings us on quite nicely to kind of talk about the film as a bit of a departure and as a bit of a sort of evolution, if you'll excuse the pun, thanks to our network, from where we've kind of gotten to with Hammer up until now, and kind of we're moving a bit more into contemporary storytelling and scares.
Yes, that's right. We're in fact, it's going to set in motion a whole new little wave of films for Hammer. That are going to run parallel to the Gothics. In fact, I was looking at what's coming up over the next few months on this podcast, and the psychological horrors just outnumber what I would class as the Gothics by one film over the next, 5 months or so. Mm-hmm. So they'd made a lot of these films in very quick succession because they were very, very successful.
Well, I can see why. I mean, there's such a different feel to this one. And I knew that these were coming up, and I've been really excited about kind of reaching this stage of our journey. Obviously, I love the Gothics. I've loved exploring them. But I remember, I think right back probably on our introductory episode, you were saying, we'll get to this really interesting point in the early 60s where the kind of style changes from what people maybe think. If you say the words Hammer horror, you're thinking Christopher Lee as Dracula, Peter Cushing as Frankenstein, the sort of beautiful ladies in their gorgeous costuming and that sort of sumptuous colour, the Kensington gore. Like, these are the things that really the words Hammer horror kind of conjure up, I think.
Of course, absolutely.
And then obviously we get to this point and we go sort of back to black and white, and we are much more contemporary, aren't we? So
we are, yes.
What was the kind of what was the decision making, I guess, from Hammer to go in this direction with A Taste of Fear? Was it sort of seeing what was going on elsewhere in cinema? Was it particular scripts or anything that were kind of brought to them? Like, how did this one come about?
Well, I'm not sure it was much of a decision on Hammer's part so much as it was on the part of Jimmy Sangster. The great writer that we've talked about endlessly throughout this thing. You know, the guy who sort of kick-started the Gothic moment, as it were, with his scripts for Curse of Frankenstein and Dracula. And by this time, he was a little bit fed up with the Gothics. He'd written a lot of them in succession. And I think he didn't want to be seen as Mr. Gothic anymore. And Hammer had done a sort of dry run for this with a film called The Full Treatment in 1960, a Val Guest thriller. It's kind of a borderline horror, very borderline. There was another one called The Snorkel, again, very borderline. But there were sort of black and white psychological thrillers. And it was when Sangster decided, I don't want to do this Gothic stuff anymore. I want to do something more modern. Then he wrote a script. He wrote a screenplay on spec. It wasn't meant for Hammer.
Oh.
No, it was originally... He'd just written it just because, like I say, he just wanted to do something different. And he wrote this spec script and he sort of shopped it around London, around Wardour Street. No one was particularly interested. We'll probably come to a bit more about that later. But no one was particularly interested. He ended up doing what he later said he should have done in the first place and went to Hammer with it.
Right.
And Michael Carreras, the producer, bless him, looked at the script and thought, this is interesting. We can do something with this. And, you know, obviously, we must never forget while we're talking about this, it's easy to romanticise Hammer, but they were a ruthless commercial outfit.
Yes.
The bottom line was...
As we said before, you know, making films is an industry.
It is an industry. The bottom line is how many bums can we get on seats, and that will equate, you know, to how much money we're going to make. So they'd looked around and they'd obviously seen Psycho doing very well.
Right.
And this script owes something to Psycho.
Yeah.
A little bit more maybe to Le Diabolique. We'll come on to that.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
But, you know, there's a bit of Psycho, a taste of Psycho, as it were, in there. And they thought, well, we can do this. We don't have to rely on the Gothics entirely. We can branch out a bit. And so they decided to go ahead and do it. And I, for one, am absolutely delighted that they did, because this film is a masterpiece. What followed is a bit patchy, but they are still very, very interesting films.
And I think this is worth labouring the point a little at this stage about just how important Jimmy Sangster was to Hammer.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, you know, I mean, I know that we've mentioned his name from time to time, in terms of his sort of screenwriting for the Gothics and the films that we've discussed over the last few weeks. So his name keeps coming up. But I don't know that we've ever really kind of lent into this idea of just how important he was for, firstly, completely sort of rejuvenating Gothic horror and pouring the kind of like the capital H horror into it, the blood and the sex, into Gothic horror films. But obviously now he is not only kind of taking the plots and the storytelling in a different direction, but he's really kind of shaping again the types of films that Hammer is making. So he wasn't just a writer, was he, Kev?
No. I mean, he produced this film for a start. Later on, he became a director. But he was the architect in a lot of ways of what Hammer were. You know, we often talk about that sort of Hammer family, as it were, Terence Fisher, Bernard Robinson, and all the rest of it, James Bernard and Jack Asher, and, you know, all those incredible technicians that they had at Bray Studios. None of them could have done any of the work that they did without the script.
Right.
And it's all there in the script when you look at those early Gothics. Everything that's so memorable about those films. Yes, Terence Fisher brings, you know, real panache to the look of the film, as do the others. But the basis of what makes them so good is right there on the page.
Yeah.
Jimmy Sangster wrote that himself. And that he kind of, more than anybody, I've come to realise, is absolutely essential to Hammer being who Hammer were. I cannot sing his praises enough. This guy was incredible, very talented writer. He had his finger on the pulse in ways I think that a lot of other people at Hammer didn't.
Right.
That he knew what the audiences wanted. And I think that was a very instinctive thing with him, that he could look around and he could just... I don't think he was sort of going to the cinema on a Saturday night and taking notes on which screen was the fullest and which ones the audience was reacting to. I just think he had this innate understanding that this is what audiences like. They liked Psycho, so let's do something similar, but we do it just different enough so that it feels completely new and original again.
Yeah.
And I think, without him, Hammer would have been a very, very different company. We're going to encounter him again as the story goes along towards the sort of the latter end of Hammer's career, where he comes back and almost kind of sets out to destroy them. To destroy the thing that he'd helped create. Because I think he just thought they went on too long doing those Gothics. I think some people might agree. I'm glad he didn't, because there's some good stuff that came in the later 70s. But, we're going to talk about Horror of Frankenstein at some point.
You're right, Kev. God, that cough is bad, isn't it?
It is bad, isn't it? Gosh. I tell you what, the very thought of that film is making me feel very peculiar. I know, very strangely, I know there are people not far from this podcast who quite liked it. We're going to have a big conversation about that in a few months' time.
I think this cough is catching, actually. Oh, dear.
But I think, I'm glad he didn't destroy it. But I think he was always a guy who was trying to push Hammer in different directions.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the impression that you get.
Yeah, I think here he is saying, we've done the Gothics, we don't need to keep belabouring the point with the Gothics. I'm glad they did, because there's some magnificent films still to come. But he was saying, let's go in a different direction. Then in the late 60s, early 70s, he was saying, no, we've done far too many of these. We need to try again. We need to be doing something different. And I think, to that end, I think he was an extraordinary talent, really.
Yeah. So, Taste of Fear. Let's have a quick look at the plot. I have stolen this from Letterboxd. It's a short one. And we'll discuss the twists and turns as we go on.
Sure.
This is kind of just the very top line, what we think's happening at the beginning of the film. So, a wheelchair-bound young woman returns to her father's home after 10 years. And although she's told he's away, she keeps seeing his dead body on the estate. Now, there's already one thing that jumps out of me in that plot synopsis that doesn't turn out to be true. So,
oh yeah, I mean, this is one of those films where what you think you see in the opening scene is revealed at the end to be completely different to what you'd been thinking it was all the way through the film.
Yeah.
And I love it for that. The way it pulls the rug from under us later in the film, that it sets all these things up. And then says, haha, no, you were wrong the whole time. Everything you thought was true is not true.
Yeah. And it pulls the rug, and then it turns out, there's another rug under that rug. Let's pull that one out as well. And, look, there's a trap door I'm going to push you down.
Multiple levels of twists and turns, and it's beautifully written.
Yeah,
beautifully written. Absolutely amazing.
Really, accomplished in the way that it kind of achieves those, layers as it all sort of starts to unfurl at the end.
That's right, yes. Yeah, and it doesn't cheat. That's what I like about it. A lot of these films cheat, and they give you things at the end which you hadn't been privy to earlier.
Right.
Everything you need to know is actually in this film. You're just being misdirected the whole time.
Yeah.
So when you watch it the second time, you are sitting there sort of thinking, oh, you clever buggers, Hammer. Look at that. Oh, what a clever man Jimmy Sangster is. He was telling us right at the start what was going on. And he just misdirected us, so we didn't actually know what we didn't get, that the clues were there because of the misdirection.
Yeah.
Absolute genius.
It is. Yeah. It's brilliant. Now, this is one that you've seen a number of times, I assume, because I know how much you love it. Did you have a different experience kind of watching it because you knew we were going to chat about it on the podcast?
Well, it's weird that I mentioned I did a commentary for it many years ago, and when you do commentaries, you tend to watch the film that you're talking about multiple times in a very short space of time, which can sometimes leave you thinking, I never want to see that film ever again.
I might leave this one for a while.
I may never come back to this because I've just watched it, sort of 15 times in a month, and I just don't need to see it again, This one, I was so excited that we were doing this one because I do still absolutely love it.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's so beautiful. Everything about this film works. The script, the direction, the acting, the music, everything is superb in this film. So, I first saw it, I think, back in the 80s on television.
Okay.
And I loved it then. And I've loved it ever since. I can't remember a time when I've not been... I watched it earlier in the week that we're recording this. I watched it for this podcast. I could happily go and watch it again tonight. It's that good. I could happily watch it again.
I feel the same.
Yeah, it's just... I think anybody who's seen this for the first time, I am so jealous of you. To come to this for the first time and to experience it. I've often said, I probably mentioned it on this podcast in the past, that if I could have one example of super science from science fiction, it would be the selective erasing of memories.
Yeah.
So that I could have my memories of this film, of 2001, of Suspiria and Blade Runner, all those films I really love, have those removed so I can go and watch them again for the first time.
Yeah.
Because when you first watch it, and particularly I was relatively young back then, I'd been in my 20s, I wasn't really thinking, wow, this is quite something. I just think this is a really good film.
Yeah, of course.
I'd love to be able to go into it again, knowing that I'm going to see something special, but seeing it for the first time.
Yeah, without all the baggage of context and,
Exactly. Yeah, just letting it sort of like wash over me. And sort of like, oh my God, this is brilliant. So I'm so jealous of people coming to this for the first time.
Well, I mean, this is a film that... I was saying just now about how the films that spring to mind when you say the words Hammer horror are those Gothics, really, or certainly for me they are. And I really I don't think I was aware of this other sort of group of more thriller-leaning films that Hammer produced. And so Taste of Fear was not a film that was on my radar at all. And,
sure,
Psycho is a contemporary film to this and one of my favourite movies of all time.
Of course.
Le Diabolique I have seen and love. So I've got this kind of awareness of black and white horrors and thrillers from this era. I've got an interest in them. And those are just, the two that sort of spring immediately to mind. And but Taste of Fear just hadn't sort of come onto my radar at all. And so when I sat down to it, I had no context apart from the fact that we were watching it for the podcast and I knew that it was a departure from the Gothics. Yep. And it blew me away. I just absolutely loved it. And it's
fantastic.
It's such an exciting film to talk about because, I love the Hammer Gothics.
Of course we do. Yeah.
But we've been doing them for quite a number of weeks now. And it's nice to see something different. It's nice to talk about something different. But also, it's made me really excited for, as you said earlier, this kind of parallel track of movies now that Hammer are going to be releasing alongside the Gothics and that we're going to be talking about over the next couple of months. Because now I've seen this one, I'm like, oh my God, give me more,
Right. I think it's one of those things, isn't it, that, if you're new to Hammer or if you're sort of only vaguely... But there are some strange people out there who don't like horror films and are only vaguely aware of Hammer. I mean,
of course.
I cross the road if I see one coming, because they're obviously very strange people. Don't trust them. Good God, no. But to those people, I think to members of the general public, not to the highly educated, knowledgeable people that listen to this podcast, if you say Hammer horror, they do think Dracula and Frankenstein. Of course they do, because that's the image that's been sort of dominant throughout all these decades. But Hammer were incredibly diverse in their programme of films. They've been releasing films, while we've been talking through this little history of their horror films, they've been releasing war films and comedies and dramas all alongside these films, and they'll continue to do so. They're going to, be releasing some science fiction films that we're not going to be talking about. They're going to do their dinosaur films in the future. They were always doing something different and something new.
We're doing the dinosaur films, though, right?
Are we doing the dinosaur film? I can't remember. I hope we are, because, sort of, let's face it,
maybe that's a Patreon run and we just do all the Hammer dinosaur films.
Come on, you cannot deny a man the chance to talk about Raquel Welch in a chamois leather bikini. Come on, it's not, it's not right. It's cruelty. But you know what I mean? These are films that you don't immediately think of when it comes to Hammer. because you immediately think, aha, blood, boobs, castles, vampires. That's what you tend to think of, isn't it? We know better now because we're doing this. We know better that they did so much more. And I think these psychological horrors are probably the most consistently interesting of the sort of extracurricular things that they did, as it were.
Also, if we ever get Hammer Time T-shirts made, can we have blood, boobs, castles on them, please?
Yeah.
That is basically sums it up, doesn't it?
Blood, boobs, castles, vampires. That's it. That's all you need to know, isn't it? Yep, that's perfect. So, yeah. Copyright Kevin Lyons. I should expect my fee when they start being sold. So,
the other thing I think that kind of comes across in terms of the style of the filmmaking with Taste of Fear is that there's a sort of European sensibility.
There is, yeah.
We've talked so much about how Hammer films have this intrinsic Britishness about them. Sort of the staff in the big houses and people going down the pub and going to their little country churches and all of that kind of stuff.
The little bit of class warfare that turns up every so often.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we've mentioned, Les Diaboliques a couple of times already, which was obviously 1955. And this film is set in France, but that's not what I mean really by European sensibility. What I mean, and what I think we're going to talk about, is this kind of this poaching of style and sensibility kind of from the continent that just seems to infuse Taste of Fear.
Definitely. And I think, we have Sangster to thank for that, but also I think we should give a shout out to the director, Seth Holt, for that. He made another couple of films for Hammer, both of which I know are favourites of yours, The Nanny and Blood from the Mummy's Tomb, which sadly he didn't finish directing that one. Sadly, he died during production.
That's
but
right.
he gets the credit for it, and he did an awful lot of it, if not most of it.
I tell you what, though, Kev, that is 3 absolute bangers.
Oh,
3
isn't
of
it just?
Faves.
Yeah, I mean, the guy didn't do much for Hammer, but when he turned up, he bought his A-game plus, didn't he? It's an incredible director, really was. And I think, he brings some of that sensibility to the film as well. It does feel very European. That might be partly down to the fact that when these films were being released, James Carreras, the managing director at Hammer, used to tell the press that they were mini Hitchcocks because that was an easy way to sell them. They're actually mini Clouseaus.
Right.
As in Henri-Jacques Clouseau, not Inspector. But Henri-Jacques Clouseau was the director of Les Diaboliques. Now, what's interesting here, I think, there's 2 things that are interesting. One is that the Hammer Gothics were already feeding into European cinema. So the Italians were now well underway with their Gothic horror films, which were very influenced by the Hammer Gothics. They eventually go off in their own direction and become a whole thing of their own, but the influence is there. But also, Les Diaboliques, when it was first seen in this country, it was on a double bill. And the film that it was on a double bill with was X the Unknown.
Oh,
which was
no way.
Jimmy Sangster's first feature-length scriptwriting gig. I reckon, because back then, they didn't have videotapes and DVDs and downloads to send out to the crew. If you wanted to see the film, you went to the cinema and watched it. And I reckon he probably took his family, his wife or whoever, to go and see X the Unknown, because he'd obviously been very proud of it. And Les Diaboliques was on, and already I think he was mentally taking notes at that point. I think he saw that and he thought, oh, this is clever. I like this. We could use this one day. And I think you just have this extraordinary sort of reserve of ideas, this memory bank that he sort of shoved all these influences into.
I love that.
And then later on went back and just sort of plucked them out as and when he needed them.
Tell you what, as well, what a night out at the cinema.
What a great double bill that would have been. Les Diaboliques and X the Unknown. Fantastic. Oh, give me a time machine now so I can go back and see it.
Exactly.
Wonderful. But yeah, I think it was, I think, yeah, you're right. There is a very European feel to it. It's paced very differently to a lot of the... Don't forget, Hammer had made thrillers right from the very inception back in the 30s when they were sort of the first iteration of Hammer. They were making thrillers the whole time, but they were very British thrillers.
Right.
this does feel different. The pacing is different. The writing is different. And that's why I think it felt like a bit of a kick up the bum at the time. That's why I think it was so popular, because people were seeing it thinking, my God, we've not seen this in a British film before. This is amazing. And clearly Hammer thought that it was a good counterpoint to their Gothics, because, like I say, it kickstarts a whole new stream for them.
Yeah. There's something about the way it looks as well, the way it's filmed, the way the camera moves. There are sorts of pans and zooms that, again, really bring to mind moments in films like Les Diaboliques. These sorts of shock moments, the way that they craft and construct the scares is very different. The way that they, we've seen a lot of close-up screams in Hammer films, right? We love to do a zoom into a lady's face as her jaws part and she lets out this enormous scream at some unknown horror that she's just seen. But there's something different about the way Taste of Fear looks and has been filmed. And I really love that you've kind of got a very similar crew behind it, but they've kind of adapted, right, to kind of to complement the script and the new sort of contemporary feel.
Well, first things first, in America this was known as Scream of Fear.
I can see why.
Possibly because, she does spend an awful lot of time screaming in this film. But secondly, yes, we need to give a shout out to the cinematographer Douglas Slocum,
right,
who was actually new to Hammer at this point.
Okay.
But was a veteran. He'd been Ealing's leading cinematographer for many years.
Okay.
And he would go on to have one of the most incredible careers of any British technician. He was going to go on to shoot The Italian Job, The Great Gatsby, Rollerball, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and the sequels, Never Say Never Again. And he'd be back at Hammer in 1979 for their remake of The Lady Vanishes. So he was already an absolute veteran. He knew exactly what he was doing. And I think, again, we've talked about this so often, about the power that Hammer had to get the best people. Not just the best casts, but they were able to get the best people behind the camera. And I think at this stage in their career, they could go to Douglas Slocum, photographer, all those great Ealing classics, and say, do you fancy doing a horror film for us? And he'd go, absolutely right, I would.
Yeah. Because
he knew the Hammer name it was so big at the time, it would bring people in and they'd see his work. But it wasn't one of those sort of situations where you think, oh, this is going to be an easy one because it's just a psychological thriller. He brings his A game as well. And the photography in this is staggering.
It's stunning. It looks so good.
It's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, every single part of the frame, there's something in it that's important. And it's just beautiful. It's the most beautifully shot film they've done for a little while, I think.
And the tension that they're building with the camera work as well.
Yeah.
The scene that really springs to mind is when she is she's just seen her father's dead body propped up in a chair in the boathouse, and screams her lungs out, obviously, and wheels her wheelchair out, and there's a pool, right, and like a swimming pool.
Yes.
And the wheel of her wheelchair, as in her panic, kind of slips down off the edge of the pool and she goes in.
Yeah.
And obviously she doesn't have the use of her legs, and so she's not a swimmer. And she is in this sort of mortal peril and has to be saved by Bob, the kind of chauffeur slash,
yeah, that's right,
sort of guy who does all the jobs. It seems he's just like, he's the guy, right?
He's the general dog's body, isn't he? Basically,
exactly.
Yeah.
But the way that moment is shot, as the camera follows her out of the boathouse or the pool house, and it's kind of focusing on the wheels, the way you can see it sort of teetering on the edge of the pool, and then the camera follows her as she sort of goes in. then pulls back so you see her in the water. Like, it's so dynamic. And
it is.
It's really kind of playing with that tension. We know as film fans, what we think is about to happen, and then it does, and it's all very sort of shocking and dramatic. And there are just moments like that pepper this film.
And we ought to, we don't do this enough, we ought to give a big shout out to the editor in this case, Eric Boyd Perkins. We very rarely talk about the editors. I think that the strength of a really good editor is that you don't notice that they've done anything.
Yeah.
Because it's a very subtle art form. You can swing your camera about as wildly as you like, and we'll notice that, no problem. But editing is such a subtle art form. And Eric Boyd Perkins does an incredible job here. The way he... the pacing is there in the script, but the pacing in the individual scenes, the way he cuts and sort of moves the frame from one camera shot to the next.
Yeah.
Absolutely exemplary. If you want to edit a psychological thriller, you want to know how to do it, come and look at his work here, because I think you'll find no better lesson.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's really, really it's just so effective. I was on the edge of my seat,
And that's all anybody wants from a psychological thriller, isn't it? That you want to be on the edge of your seat the whole time.
Exactly. I mean, he has done his job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen it so often, I know what's coming. I'm still on the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
Because of the power of the film is such that you buy into it, even though you know what's happening. You kind of willingly forget that to buy into the suspense of the film. And my God, is it suspenseful? It really is.
So while we're sort of talking about the European sensibilities, I've mentioned that the film is set in France. But where was it filmed? And was this a European production? Like, how was this one kind of put together?
Well, it was partly shot on location. The Villa de la Garoupe is the cliffs overlooking Cap d'Antibes in the south of France. They serve as a location for the exteriors of the Appleby mansion. And there was about 2 weeks of shooting around the Riviera. I mean, night work if you can get it.
Honestly.
Get paid for a couple of weeks and go, OK, they worked hard, but still,
Kev, I was fully expecting you to sort of say that it was shot at Camber Sands or something. And, they're down there in November pretending it's the south of France.
No.
And actually, shivering.
They pushed the boat out for this one. I think they saw it as a kind of prestige project.
Right.
I think they threw a bit of money at it. They shot the interiors at Elstree.
Okay.
Not at Bray. Work was continuing there on Shadow of the Cat and Curse of the Werewolf, so it was full. So they had to go down the road to Elstree. I mean, this shows what Hammer were like at the time. They were making so much stuff, their own studio was full.
Right.
The studio they owned was full of their stuff, so they had to move somewhere else to do another one.
I wonder if that sort of does help to lend to this this different feel of it, though, because obviously, we've spoken time and again about how wonderful the set dressers and the production designers are in turning Bray time and time again into a completely different looking place. But I don't know, it does feel particularly removed, this one. So the fact that it was shot at Elstree makes sense, actually, and I think was probably... did the film a bit of a favour in some ways?
I think so, and I think the location footage certainly makes it feel very different.
It does.
We have some gorgeous coastline in Britain, but nothing. No, if they'd gone to Camber Sands or anywhere else in Britain, they couldn't really have pulled off the fact they were in the south of France. The Riviera does have its own particular look and feel. And I think they knew that, so we'll go down there for 2 weeks, we'll shoot some footage there, we'll shoot, take some actors with us to do the close-ups, or we'll just shoot some establishing footage. Yeah. And it really does add to the atmosphere of the film. There's
a lovely line, actually, that Robert says. I think he and Penny are sort of down on the rocks. She's sunbathing. And they're having a chat, and they're talking about him working for her father. And he sort of says something a little bit negative, I think, about the wife or something. And Penny says, well, why do you work here then? And he says, well, because I get to live on the Riviera and drive nice cars. It's like, well, yeah. Do you know what? fair enough.
I mean, perfect. The early 60s, where else would you want to be but on the Riviera driving nice cars?
Right.
You know, it was an era of beautiful cars, and the south of France was probably the coolest, hippest place you could possibly be.
Yeah, driving around pretending he's Steve McQueen the entire time, I would imagine.
Pretty much. So, I mean, I'm with him on that one. You know, I can't drive, but I do like the look of a sports car and a classic car. I'd have learned to drive very quickly if it was, you know, this was the year before I was born. But had I been even older than I am now, I would have actually sort of, quite happily gone to the south of France, learned how to drive a sports car and tootled up and down on the cliffs for a few days. Yeah, why not?
Do you know what? That brings me very nice.
Perfect.
Honestly, we've gotten to the point, Kev, that we are in sync. We are the perfect co-hosts for this.
Anybody would think we knew what we were doing.
Anyone would think that.
They'd be wrong, but they would think that.
But you have just brought me on delightfully to this week's instalment of Hammer in History, our little feature.
Ah, good.
Where we look at kind of what's going on in the world, but mainly the UK at the time that the film we're talking about was released. We've done a few films now from 1961. This is the last one we're going to do. So I thought it was time to have a look at Hammer in History in 1961.
Hammer in History.
And the reason what you have said has brought me on so nicely to this is you talking about nice sports cars. Because in 1961, the Jaguar E-Type is launched.
Yeah.
Now, I also don't drive. We live in London. Like, obviously we don't drive.
Why would we drive living in London? Exactly.
But my mum... And in fact, my mum's kind of side of the family are really interested in cars, always have been.
Right.
And my mum isn't with us anymore, but anytime I hear a reference to the E-Type Jag, I immediately think of my mum because it was her dream car. She always said if she won the lottery, she'd buy herself an E-Type.
And you know what? If she'd bought it at the right time, she'd have bought one that my dad would have worked on.
What?
My dad worked at the Jaguar car factory in Coventry.
Oh,
and
my
he was
God,
there,
that is so cool.
There right through the 60s and into the mid-70s when he decided he wanted to own a newsagent shop and we moved to the Isle of Wight. But I don't know why, it was his decision. But he worked at the and it was always known as the Jaguar in the Midlands. It wasn't Jaguar, it was the Jaguar. And I can remember he took me to the factory one day, which put me right off the idea of factory work forever. But he took me there one day and they were making E-Type Jaguars.
Oh, my God.
I used to have models of them also because, you know, they were the aspirational thing before Aston Martins, really.
I mean, it's a stunning looking car. Again, I know nothing about motors, but that is a car that even I can look at and go, yeah, okay, I get it.
In the 1960s, if you were a British kid, there were three cars you wanted. You wanted a Jaguar E-Type, you wanted an Aston Martin DB5, and you wanted a Mini.
Yeah.
Because you'd seen Michael Caine being effortlessly cool in a Mini. You know, and it's like, those were the three cars every boy in the country in the 1960s wanted to have. And we had pictures of them on the wall. We had all the models. We had the dinky toys of all of these cars. You know, they were iconic. And that's an overused word, but they were iconic. And the E-Type in particular is a gorgeous car.
Well, every boy and girl, if my mum is anyone to go by, everybody wanted this car.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. That's encouraging. Excellent.
So elsewhere in 1961, I'll rattle through some stuff. There are some interesting things going on. Obviously, we already, when we first entered the 60s, we sort of hinted at this idea that, you know, things were about to change. And 1961 already seems to be the year that things are starting to pick up a little bit. So we'll start the satirical magazine Private Eye and the Sunday Telegraph were first both published in the UK in 1961. Private Eye and, I believe, the Sunday Telegraph still going in 2026.
Indeed they are, yes.
Barrister and human rights activist Peter Benenson wrote an article called The Forgotten Prisoners, which was published in several internationally read newspapers. And this was later to be thought of as the founding of Amnesty International.
Ah, excellent.
So a big, again, still around. thank goodness.
Exactly, yes.
Feels like we need them more than ever at the moment.
Well, yeah, it certainly does. But they build things to last in the 60s, clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Jags, like big kind of charity organisations and satirical magazines. You know, these are all the things that we need in 2026.
Long may they continue. Long may they continue.
Elsewhere in politics, the Suicide Act 1961 decriminalises acts of or attempts at suicide in England and Wales. And obviously that would then roll out across the rest of the UK. And this is literally the reason that nowadays we are much more careful about the language that we use around suicide, because, you know, the go-to phrase is often that somebody commits suicide.
That's right.
But that harks back to the idea that you were committing a crime.
Indeed, yes.
Because it was literally a criminal act before 1961. And so now we use much more thoughtful language about the act because, you know, it's not a crime. And this is when that whole kind of thinking started. So
I did often wonder as a kid what the punishment would have been if you'd killed yourself.
Honestly.
What were they going to do?
Yeah, I know.
You know, it was such a bizarre bit of very English thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously it all, you know, stemmed from it kind of being a mortal sin under the church. But
yeah, I guess, yeah.
That's one thing. But, you know, to, as you say, to criminalise it seems ridiculous. So well done, 1961.
Well done.
Talking about religion, and this is a slightly personal one, but for any horror fans listening, which hopefully we've got a few, it should also resonate. The consecration of Guildford Cathedral happened in 1961, and if anybody knows anything about me or a little film called The Omen, there is a very famous scene set at Guildford Cathedral where Damien and his parents are being driven up to a wedding, which is obviously going to be very grand because it's set at Guildford Cathedral.
Of course.
And because he is the son of Satan, he has a total freak out in the car. And this is my favourite ever horror film, so this is why it's a personal fact. But I lived just down the road from Guildford Cathedral. I used to drive past it multiple times a week.
Excellent.
And I'm absolutely convinced that kind of proximity to the horror of knowing that the son of the devil had been just down the road was definitely something that sort of sparked my imagination and means that today that The Omen is still my favourite horror film of all time.
Fantastic.
So 1961 is when the cathedral was actually consecrated, which I thought was quite interesting. But let's talk about, when we talk about the 60s, there are two real things that spring to mind about the early 60s, 1961. The first would be the Beatles.
Of course.
So they perform under the name The Beatles at the Cavern Club in Liverpool for the first time following their return from Hamburg. So I think you'll remember a few weeks ago we talked about them performing under the name The Beatles for the first time, but that wasn't in the UK, that was in Germany. They've just gotten back and now they do their first gig at the Cavern Club under the name The Beatles in Liverpool, and it's also George Harrison's first appearance there.
Right.
They later begin regular performances at the club. They had a sort of residency there, I suppose you would describe it. In the summer, Stu Sutcliffe leaves the group, and on the 9th of November, their future manager, Brian Epstein, saw the Beatles for the first time at the Cavern in 1961. And that, as they say, the rest is history. Because...
Well, I'm sure we're going to mention these boys again
because the world's changed.
Because they change everything in the 60s alongside Hammer. You know, they sort of, as Hammer were to horror films, the Beatles were to everything else. So they probably will get a lot of mentions as we go along, yeah.
I know, I love it. And it sort of all began here in 1961.
Brilliant.
And the other most important thing, I might argue, even more important than the Beatles.
What?
I know. The birth control pill became became available on the NHS. Now, initially...
All right, I'll give you that. I thought you were going to name some, obscure band that no one ever remembers anymore. So, no, far more important than the Beatles, and I was about to storm out. But no, I'll give you that. Okay, carry on, as you were.
I really buried the lead on that one, Kev.
You did. I was again, I was on the edge of my seat, getting ready to have a good old Kev rant.
But no, even we can't deny the pill, capital T, capital P, becoming available on the NHS literally changed the world, and changed the world specifically for women. Initially, when it became available, it was only available to married women, but that obviously would then continue to change. So women being in control of their own contraception.
And it was huge because this was the birth of the permissive society, so-called, and therefore the birth of swinging London.
Yeah.
The rest of Britain wasn't swinging, but London was. And this was sort of the inception of all of that. This is what we think of as the 60s kind of starts with that in a lot of ways. Yeah. It's so groundbreaking.
Absolutely. My God, the E-Type Jag, the Beatles and the pill. I mean... Talk about an iconic year.
It's a blueprint for the 1960s, isn't it? It is the blueprint. And then, that same year, Hammer are deciding, we're going to go off in a different direction now.
Right.
And so, whoa. I mean, this was a year before I was born. By about, what 3 months from the end of the year be? Is it October?
Yeah.
No, September. I was already in existence, albeit just a mass of cells. Boy, to have been a teenager in 1961, 62, and to have seen all this going on around you and being at the birth of something incredible like that. Yeah. Wow. Can you imagine that? It's the one time I actually do feel I wish I was a bit older. Most of the time I just think, oh God, I'm old and knackered and I wish I wasn't. But when you look at years like 61 and 62, you do think, God, I wish I'd been
you sort of
16,
quite happily
17.
add a few extra years at the beginning.
That's right,
so that you could,
Just to say, I was there. I was in the Cavern Club watching the Beatles.
Or on Carnaby Street or wherever.
Carnaby Street. And, sort of the next year or whenever it happened, my girlfriend went on the pill and it was like everybody was happier and safer because, it was just... what a time to have been alive. What a time to have been a teenager. Again, I'm so jealous.
I can't wait to come on to talk about the birth of a miniskirt in a few weeks.
Oh, I think I'm probably going to need a little lie down after that, to be honest.
So we'll wrap up our little look back at 1961, as we always do, by looking at film. So I'll list some titles in a moment, but again, just kind of in terms of the sort of political temperature and the kind of progression, I suppose, at the time. We had the premiere of a film called Victim, which was notable as the first in the English language to use the word homosexual.
That's right,
film.
Yep.
And later in the year, the film A Taste of Honey was released, which had sort of themes around, like, there's an interracial relationship.
Sure.
There is homosexuality. There is unmarried pregnancy. So we're sort of seeing these films that are really touching on kind of contemporary life and like contemporary issues of young people specifically.
I do find it staggering still that these kind of topics weren't allowed to be discussed in British film until literally the year before I was born. So these films would have still been doing the rounds when I was born. So it's in my lifetime. It took them that long to be able to say homosexual. Good God, what did they think was going to happen if they said that word? It's like, did they, I think they honestly thought that if we said this guy's a homosexual, an awful lot of the male members of the audience would go, I think I'll give that a go.
Yeah. Me too.
Me too, yeah. Not quite how it works, but I'm sure back then that's what they thought. Yeah. I'm fairly sure of that. And it staggers me that, a lot of these changes happened in my lifetime, and that is just... It should have happened a lot earlier. It feels like it should have happened a lot earlier, but it didn't. So, yeah.
So Victim and A Taste of Honey, both worth checking out. And elsewhere, I mean, good God, what a list of films. West Side Story, Breakfast at Tiffany's, The Guns of Navarone, Yojimbo. And then, there's a couple of your absolute faves, Kev, I know. Day the Earth Caught Fire.
Yes.
Hammer's Cash on Demand.
Brilliant.
Both 1961. And in horror, you mentioned earlier about other filmmakers, other studios, other countries starting to make more gothic horror. And so in 1961, we get Roger Corman's The Pit and the Pendulum.
Yes.
Obviously based on Edgar Allan Poe's story. And we get The Innocents.
Oh, my God.
One of the greatest ghost films, haunting films ever committed to screen.
It's a toss-up between that and The Haunting for me. There's a hair's breadth between the two of them. They are magnificent.
I'm definitely team The Innocents.
Right, yeah.
But I mean, it's such a good film. If anybody listening to this hasn't seen The Innocents yet, this is another one, going back to Kev's point earlier. I am envious that you get to watch it for the first
time. I know, just amazing. Yeah, just again, why would you not have wanted to be a teenager in 1961?
Right.
It was all happening, wasn't it?
Let's all go to the cinema and get the shit scared out of us.
Absolutely, yes.
Amazing. Right. Well, we're all up to date. So let's start talking about some of these twists and turns and rug pulls in Taste of Fear that we've already alluded to. We've talked about the way that the look of the film kind of creates tension, but I think it would be good kind of plot-wise to like take ourselves kind of through what we are led to believe in this film and then kind of what actually is revealed to be happening.
Yes.
So Penny turns up in France. She's in a wheelchair. She's picked up from the airport by the chauffeur, Robert, and told that her father, who she hasn't seen in 10 years because they live in different countries, is away, right? He's had to go away on a business trip.
That's right,
and
yes.
She's already a little bit, like, shocked and suspicious because it's like, oh, well, like, he wrote me a letter asking me to come home and now he's not here to greet me. That's weird.
Yeah.
Gets back to the house. His wife, Jane, who is played by Anne Todd. I should say, actually, that Penny is played by Susan Strasberg. She's amazing. Robert is played by Ronald Lewis. And then we get back to the house. This beautiful, Kev, as you said, this sort of on the cliffs, on the French Riviera, looking out over the sea. It's beautiful sort of mansion, I guess, this big house. They keep talking about the fact that Dad has got loads of money.
Oh, yeah. It's the sort of house where you retire to with your E-Type Jag to drive down to the local cinema to watch some great films.
Exactly, yeah.
It really is. It's that kind of house.
Popping contraceptive pills on the way.
I'd sort of hearing news about this great new band coming out of Britain.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's like, it is. I mean, it's almost sort of the epitome of French chic, isn't it? French 60s chic. You know, it's the kind of place where you would imagine, you know, Brigitte Bardot or someone like that would have lived.
It's beautiful.
They probably didn't, but it's the kind of place where you think
imagine it, yeah.
Stereotypical. yeah, exactly.
Jane is very welcoming. Anne Todd is gorgeous. She's sort of playing this sort of slightly older woman, I suppose, but you do get the impression that she is younger than her husband.
Yes,
so
that's
she's
right.
probably closer really to Penny's age than she is to the age of her husband. She's very welcoming. She sort of bends over backwards to make Penny feel comfortable at her father's house. But these weird things start happening. So as I mentioned earlier, one night Penny wheels herself out as she's sort of exploring, takes her wheelchair out to the pool house, and in there's a sort of candle burning and shadows flickering all around the place, and she sees her father sitting in a chair. And I think initially she thinks, oh, Dad's back, but then she realises no, he is a cold, staring, dead body. And this is the first sort of shock of the film, isn't it? Because the way that he looks, Kev, is, I think, very unsettling.
Oh, absolutely it is. Yeah, he's terrifying, isn't he?
staring eyes, and he's such a striking looking guy. He's got that amazing look that some older men have when their hair goes white but their eyebrows stay black.
That's right, yes. Yeah.
And it kind of gives his eyes this sort of hooded appearance and makes him look even more scary as this kind of staring corpse.
This is Fred Johnson we're talking about here, the actor. We'd seen him in Quatermass Experiment and Curse of Frankenstein, The Abominable Snowman. We'd seen him in a whole load of Hammer films already. He was a bit of a regular at Bray or Elstree in this case.
I had not realised that.
Ah, we see, that's how versatile an actor he was.
Well, I think maybe I hadn't realised because he doesn't really do anything.
No, he just sort of sits there and we see him in photographs, and that's about it, really. But yeah.
I didn't realise he was like a Hammer guy. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
This is why you're here.
Well, I've got to be good for something, I suppose.
Don't be silly. So this is where you start to get, and this is one of the other films that really springs to mind. An earlier film is Gaslight, because they start essentially gaslighting Penny.
Yeah.
Because she is convinced that she has seen this, but they take her back to bed after she's fallen in the pool. They call Dr. Pierre Girard. Now, does that name ring a bell for some reason?
It does, doesn't it? Yes.
It does.
And I have a theory about this, which Hammer fans will scoff at and will hate me for, but I have a theory about this.
So we've got Christopher Lee essentially back, kind of, playing a character called Dr. Pierre Girard, who we have seen him play a character called Dr. Pierre Girard in The Man Who Could Cheat Death.
Well, like I say, I have this theory. Hammer fans, you can tune out for a second now because this will drive you mad. But I have this insane theory that he's either Dr. Pierre Girard's grandson or maybe, and this is where I completely lose my mind, he's the same man having taken some of Dr. Bonnet's immortality serum.
I want it to be that one.
I want it to be that. I really want it to be that. There's no indication anywhere in this film that either of these theories holds water. It's just, he just reused the name. In my mind, that's what happens. I'm sticking with it, and I will fight you all to death on the internet about this one if you want to. But
I'm sorry, Kev. You say there's no indication. They're both played by Christopher Lee. They both got exactly the same name. I'm sorry. If you ask me, he took some of that serum and retired to the French Riviera, and good on him.
Well, to me, it makes perfect sense. It really does. So, yeah, and I'm going to live with that. And I always will. Yeah.
We'll both climb that hill and die on it. And anybody who doesn't want to follow us up, it's up to them.
Absolutely. Yeah, losers, all of you. But,
So he is kind of attending to Penny, gives her some sleeping tablets. She goes to sleep. But she doesn't really go to sleep because her brain is whirring, and she's absolutely convinced, even though they're saying to her, no, don't be silly, darling. You know, your father isn't here. You know, he's away on a business trip. The pool house is always locked. You know, it's never used. It's just full of old furniture. She's convinced that this is what she has seen. And the film kind of continues along this line where she'll see him in her room and his head will sort of fall forward, and she will see his car back in the garage and the piano tinkling, and she's sort of saying to Jane, well, who plays the piano? Oh, it's just your father. He keeps it locked. And then she'll sort of go to lift the lid, but it will indeed be locked. So how did Penny actually hear the piano being played? Yeah. She says to them, you know, well, what car did father take when he left in the middle of the night? Oh, well, he took, you know, the little car, the little white car. And she said, well, I just saw it in the garage. And then they go, and obviously it's not really there. And so they're all sort of pretending that she's going mad. And they keep going back to this idea that she's this sort of fragile-minded little thing.
Yes,
that
of course.
She's always been a bit fanciful and a bit neurotic.
Yeah.
And since her riding accident, when she lost the use of her legs, you know, she's sort of been on the verge of topping herself the whole time, you know, getting committed. And so you get this very sort of sinister playing of sort of psychological manipulation and gaslighting, and these like dead bodies and very spooky moments that keep sort of rearing their heads to basically drive her insane.
One of the great things about the script, of course, is we find out later on she might be the one doing the gaslighting.
Exactly.
She kind of turns the tables on the gaslighters, and she has her own secret.
Yeah.
So it turns out that Penny isn't actually Penny at all. Mm-hmm. She's actually Penny's friend, Maggie Frenham, who, when we see the opening scene, that's actually Penny that's died in the lake.
Right.
And Maggie travels to the family home to try to get to the bottom of the mystery.
Right.
And to get a bit of justice for her friend. And so we get this sort of thing at the end where it turns out, she's not who we thought she was, which is very clever. We're completely thrown by what we see in that opening scene.
Yes,
it does
exactly that.
It does raise one question. When I said earlier it doesn't cheat, it kind of does, because there are a number of scenes where Penny, I'm doing air quotes, Penny is seen on her own struggling to get in and out of a wheelchair. Why would she be doing that if she was on her own?
So I've got a bit of a theory about this, and what struck me as well is that Jane does a couple of things when she's on her own, when you sort of think like, why are you acting sort of concerned and confused about Penny's behaviour, and sort of picking up the phone to call somebody because you're so concerned when actually you know what you're doing.
Exactly.
You know, no one's watching. But I think that both of them are, they're sort of in this house the whole time together. It's quite a sprawling house, but really, there are members of staff, and Dr. Gerard is popping in all the time. And you sort of think like, or I was comforting myself, I suppose, that they've had to go method, right? Because there are eyes on them all the time. This is such a film of paranoia, and you almost think like there's so much hinging for Jane and for Penny on them keeping up this pretense, that all they would need is for Penny, in speech marks, to be seen, walking to her bed instead of sort of dragging herself into it, etc. Somebody to walk past the window and it all falls apart. So I think they've both just committed.
And I think maybe you mentioned, that they went method. I wonder if, because we know Jimmy Sangster had a hell of a sense of humour, if there wasn't a little joke here, because Susan Strasberg was the daughter of Lee Strasberg, the drama coach who invented the method. So I wonder if there was like a bit of a Jimmy Sangster gag there. Like,
oh my God, that's actually hilarious. I love that.
Yeah, her character is in method as well. So
that's amazing. Because a little bit like when we spoke about the Shadow of the Cat, this is another inheritance plot.
It is, yeah.
Because what they need to do is, it basically turns out that Jane is shagging the help.
Yeah.
Right? Her and Robert, played by an incredibly dashing Ronald Lewis,
yes.
I must say.
Yes.
He is hot, Kev. I was like,
you can see why she's shagging him.
Who's this guy?
You can see why she's shagging him.
Yeah,
you can. Handsome fella.
You can
Very
see
handsome fella.
And he keeps picking Penny up and sort of carrying her around. I'm like, oh my God, Robert. So he and Jane have got this plot because if the dad dies, because it was his dad's money and his dad didn't agree with like remarrying, so he wrote into his will all of the family money is basically tied up in the fact that if dad dies, all the money goes to Penny.
Yeah.
And the only way it doesn't go to Penny is if she is in some way incapacitated.
Right.
And Robert's like, well, what do you mean incapacitated? And she says, well, I suppose if I were mad.
Yes. Incapacitated was one of those euphemisms for, sort of, she's a bit incapacitated, she's a complete raving loon, and she wasn't until you lot turned her up and made her one,
Exactly. And so this is the plot, isn't it? It's that they basically have to gaslight her and send her mad through all of these sort of tricks and secrets and, dead bodies and tinkling pianos and disappearing motor cars and all of that kind of thing, to try and send her off the deep end, and I don't mean into the swimming pool, so that they can basically get her locked up, and Jane and Robert essentially inherit the money and, continue to live a life of Larry on the French Riviera together.
I mean, to be honest, it's quite an elaborate plot on their part. They're going to quite some extremes to drive this poor woman mad. I don't think they kind of... they didn't know it wasn't Penny.
No.
They didn't know that this was actually the much more resilient and much stronger Maggie. Mm-hmm. And so I guess their plot has to keep being ramped up because Penny may well have cracked under the pressure.
Exactly.
I think maybe she was a bit fragile because of everything that had happened to her.
Absolutely. And we know that she does take her own life.
She kills herself. So, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So we know that she was, very fragile and very vulnerable. Maggie is not at all like that. She'll scream like a good one because, who wouldn't? But I think she's a much tougher character. Well, I know she's a much tougher character. You know that from the ending of the film. She's kind of cold at the end, isn't she? When she reveals herself. She's very vengeful. She's an angel of vengeance at that point for the real Penny. And I think they have to ramp up the things they're doing because she's just not cracking.
Well, I mean, even to the point that in the end they're like, well, this isn't working, let's just push her off a cliff.
Yeah, pretty much it comes down to as brutal as that.
They realise that the initial plan of sort of making her go insane and therefore her being kind of defunct from the inheritance, they realise that isn't working. And so they put Penny and her dad's dead body into the car, and Robert is, pretending like, oh, we'll go to the police, don't worry about it, because they've just there's that amazing scene where he is diving in the pool and sees the father's body at the bottom of the swimming pool.
Incredible. Yeah,
doesn't it remind you of Night of the Hunter?
It does very much. Yes, that's another influence, I think, particularly at that moment. Definitely big
time. And again, those staring eyes, I mean, it's absolutely okay, I wasn't actually going to ask you this, but it's just occurred to me. Is that the actor or is that a dummy that they've got under the water? Do you know?
It's a question I don't know the answer to.
Yeah.
If it's Fred Johnson, I mean, I take my hat off to him. I'm terrified of water. I mean, I don't... I get a bit nervous sitting in a bathtub, so I'm not good at water. I lived on an island for 16 years and went slightly mad.
I was about to say, wait, didn't you live on the Isle of Wight?
Oh, no. I was psychologically a mess by the time I left the Isle of Wight because, I was surrounded by the bloody stuff and I hated it. I even bought shares in a bloody fishing boat and we used to go shark fishing and I used to sit right at the top where I was the chief Brody. I was sitting right at the top of the boat with every water wing and life belt I could imagine in the calmest water you would find anywhere off England. It was just so like a mill pond, but I'm just covered in everything. If I could have got scuba gear on, I would have had that on as a precaution. So I'm not fond of water.
You mentioned Brody. There's a line in Jaws, isn't there, where he says that he's scared of the water, and she says, "What? And you chose to live on the island?"
Chose to live on an island, yeah.
And he says, "Well, it's only an island if you look at it from the ocean."
That's right. Yes, I cheered when I saw that at the age of 14 or whatever it was. Hey, I get it. But no, it was. If it's him, if it's Fred Johnson, that's incredible.
It is
to be underwater and
with his eyes open and completely unmoving.
Yeah.
But the other side of it, Kev, is if it isn't him, it's also incredible because it looks so much like him. I mean, this isn't the sort of dummy that we were laughing at when they threw it off in Abominable Snowman and one of his legs came off. This is impressive.
Whichever way you look at it, Hammer played a blinder with that scene.
100%. It's
either
really
they got
striking.
One of the best models, best dummies ever, or they got Fred Johnson, respected veteran character actor, to go underwater and keep his eyes open.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Whichever way you look at it, absolute genius.
Yeah. So Robert finds him down there and he's then like, don't worry, Penny, I'll take you to the cops. But instead, Jane is in the middle of the road waving her arms.
Yeah.
And he gets out of the car and just like leaves the handbrake off, I suppose, because the car then goes off of the cliff with Penny in the back seat, and they've got the dad's body like secreted kind of in the front seat. And again,
that's right.
That is the most terrifying image, this like sodden corpse.
Yep.
And as she leans over as the car is going over the cliff, she sees it. And you know, we keep saying like, oh, well, it's Maggie, it's Penny, you know, she already knows. It's like, yeah, but she is still having to be in extremely close proximity to a literal corpse.
That's right, yes, which would freak anybody out.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would say Fred Johnson in this is one of the scariest things we've seen in any Hammer film so far. Mm-hmm. And he does nothing.
This is why I didn't even realise it was him.
He just sits there and lightly moulds us throughout the film.
Yeah.
You know, there's a slight bit of decay as he goes along. Yeah. And that's all he does. But he's so brilliantly photographed.
Yeah.
It makes him a real monster.
Exactly that. And he's got such a good stare.
Yeah, he has. Yeah. Terrific face. Terrific face.
Mm-hmm. And so then, yes, obviously, part of their new plot, now that they've realised they can't drive her mad, they're just going to chuck her off a cliff.
Yeah.
And the point there, of course, is they think that she can't use her legs and she can't swim. She keeps telling them she can't swim. And I think Robert at one point says to her, like, well, you know, you could give it a go. Like,
sure.
I think it's possible. And she's like, no, I don't want to.
That's right, yes.
And so they are absolutely convinced that if they get her in the water, she is done for. But obviously, we know that, we soon find out that actually it's Maggie. And she manages to jump free as the car goes over the cliff. And then it kind of builds to this sort of climax, this big reveal, doesn't it?
Well, you get then an even more brutal let's throw her off the cliff moment where Bob thinks he sees her sitting in the wheelchair. And this is such a great moment. I just love this. And he
honestly,
goes rushing up to her.
Howling. It's so good.
It's so brilliant. He rushes up. So you see her from the back. You see apparently Peggy sitting in the wheelchair, and he goes rushing up in a rage, kicks the wheelchair off the cliff, looks over the edge, and it was Jane sitting in the wheelchair the whole time. Slightly contrived, but bloody brilliance. It's that one final twist of the knife at the end.
Yeah.
You know, they could have stopped. They could have stopped the whole thing with the both of them being arrested and, you know, sort of Peggy revealing herself to be Maggie, and it would still been brilliant. But no, let's have one final twist of the knife. And that's Jimmy Sangster for you, isn't it? I'm not letting you off the hook.
It really does end on a high. It's
incredible.
It's so over the top. But
literally, she goes over the top, doesn't she? But literally, yeah. It is a contrivance, but who cares?
You're right, Kev. You've already got that moment of like high drama when I think Jane says to Maggie, "Oh, so you know you can walk, or you know you're not disabled," and she goes, "No, I'm not," and she stands from the wheelchair.
Yeah.
And you're like, "Yeah, come on, Maggie,
brilliant.
This is amazing."
Yeah.
And then Jane is sort of this broken mess where she's like, "Oh God!" So not only has my plot not worked, and I'm not going to get any of this money, but I'm now like definitely going to get arrested.
That's right.
She sits down in the chair, and then she doesn't get arrested because she gets booted over the cliff by her boyfriend.
Oh, there's an incredible irony, isn't there, to the fact that they've gone to all this trouble with this intricate plot, and he's been against the wrong woman.
Yes.
They weren't even doing it to the woman they thought they were doing it to.
Well, which, as you've said, Kev, is the main reason it doesn't work, because Maggie is this sort of much. I guess she's got a bit more kind of fortitude within her than poor Penny did.
She's much stronger than Peggy probably was. Yeah.
And then the last sort of twist that we haven't touched upon yet is that Dr. Pierre Girard is in on it.
That's right, yeah.
Because all the way along, you think he's the lover. He's the one that's behind the plot with Jane. He's the bloke that she's shagging behind her husband's back.
Yeah.
Because Robert is being very helpful to Penny. In fact, they have a bit of a smooch at one point.
They do.
And so you think, Dr. Pierre, shake your fist, what a git. But actually, no. It turns out that he and Maggie are in plot together.
They are. Yes, they've been working together.
God, this film's so clever.
And that works brilliantly because he's Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
And we expect him at this point to be the monster, to be the cad.
Yes, so true.
So we're fully, that's what we do. We're watching him the whole time. It's that classic bit of misdirection. Look over here, I'm going to make something jump out of this side of the screen. They're doing it right across the whole film. Look at this guy. It's Christopher Lee. He's a doctor. He's obviously a wrong-un, isn't he? He's French to boot. Good Lord. It's like, of course he's a wrong-un. He's a French doctor. But, so we spend the whole film sort of looking at him, keeping a very wary eye on him, thinking he's going to reveal himself any second. And then when he does, it's like, oh my God, he's the good guy.
Yeah. There's that
so
amazing
clever
moment when he lets himself out of the back room at the police station.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even say anything. He just kind of steps out. I love it.
Christopher Lee called this the best film that I was in that Hammer ever made. It had the best director, the best cast, the best story. I'm not entirely sure I agree with him on that, but I can kind of see why he liked it. Because I think he liked being that kind of deceptive character in the film.
Yeah.
I think he liked the fact that I could not do anything, because he's not playing Gerard as sinister at all. He's just playing with our expectations, as indeed was Seth Holton's Sangster.
And again, Kev, that is what makes it work, because you're right, the film doesn't cheat. You don't, when the reveal comes, you don't go, well, why's Christopher Lee been acting like an evil maniac for the entire film?
That's right.
It's like, no,
because
actually,
he hasn't.
You cast your mind back and you go, oh no, that was just me assuming. Like, they haven't led me to believe that, apart from the fact that it's Christopher Lee.
I've said this so many times before, I'll probably say it again in the course of this podcast. Jimmy Sangster was a bloody clever bloke.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing, didn't he? So, to have this
really
idea
good.
that we'll just cast Christopher Lee and everybody will basically do my work for me. Mm-hmm. I don't have to make him play sinister. I just have to have him be Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
And it works. It's brilliant.
It does. It all hangs together. And I think as a thriller, it is so satisfying for exactly that reason, that you look back and you go, oh, you clever bastards.
And I think even those things where, you can nitpick and say, well, why didn't she get herself out the pool because she could do that? Even that, you just think, well, that's just cinematic convention, isn't it? The film, from the viewer's perspective, the film would fall apart if we could see her doing that.
Yeah.
So just as a convention, we buy it and we accept it, and it's fine. It's all right. It's not a criticism of the film at all, just merely an observation. But
and I think as we've touched on, there are ways that you can argue it, so it still doesn't feel like it might feel like a little bit of a stretch, but it doesn't feel like cheat.
It's a stretch, but it's not to the point where it snaps.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
The story never breaks.
Perfectly
the story never breaks. It all holds together. Sometimes it's clinging on by its fingernails, but that's the genius of Hammer and Seth Holt and Jimmy Sangster and all the rest of them, that they're able to keep all of that on a knife's edge and still pull it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we move on too far, I just want to go back slightly to focus on Susan Strasberg, because all of the cast are really good in this film. Ronald Lewis, as well as being devilishly handsome as Robert, is excellent. Anne Todd as Jane is really, really good, actually. She's an amazing actress. Obviously Christopher Lee. But Susan Strasberg really kind of carries this film as Penny/Maggie. She's in the vast majority of the scenes. Like, there's not a lot of time that she isn't actually on screen, and it kind of comes down to her being convincing, that we don't start questioning things about her identity earlier on. She needs to be convincing as Penny, not only to the people within the film that she's trying to fool, but to the audience as well. So that, the tension and the drama all hangs together and sort of beautifully crescendos at that ending. So talk to me a little bit about Susan Strasberg. Obviously, it's interesting considering how much I like her performance that she was the daughter of the guy who invented the method.
Yeah.
But do we see her elsewhere? I'd love to see more of her.
Not for Hammer. She didn't have a huge career, to be honest. Prior to this, she'd been in Picnic in 1955, Stage Struck in 1958. And then after this, she did a few films, but not much. I suppose she got the FBI, that was a TV series. She was in a couple of those trippy, druggy dramas that came out in the late 60s. The Trip in 67, Psych Out in 1968. These were AIP films, which sort of, they saw what the kids were up to and thought, yeah, we'll make films for the kids. And then they got middle-aged writers in who'd never met a kid in their life and sort of wrote these films where, we think we know what a hippie looks like. Anyway, that's a story for another time. But she did a lot of television. She's in the FBI, she's in The Invaders, she's in Night Gallery. She did a 1973 version of Frankenstein where she plays Elizabeth on television.
No way.
Yeah. And the year before that, she was in this great little folk horror film called The Legend of Hillbilly John, which is very good. So she was mostly a TV actress. She did a lot of things later on. She's in The Manitou in 1978. She got the lead role in that, and filmed like Bloody Birthday and stuff. So not a huge career, which is a shame because I think... Bloody Birthday.
That's the only one out of all of the ones you've just listed, Kev, that I've actually seen, and it's a banger.
It's all right. It's okay. It is what it is. But it's surprising because she's so good in this. You'd have thought that this would have been the launch pad for a whole massive superstar career. But she was kind of imposed on Hammer. Bit of a throwback to the old days of, we've got to have an American star in a British film. Columbia, who Hammer was still working with at the time, they asked for an American star and they suggested Susan Strasberg. And normally I balk at things like that. I think, oh, come on, let the producer cast, the leading role. But I think they got it right here. I think she's terrific. Yeah. And in fact, Jimmy Sangster was really quite a fan of hers and said he was a bit worried that, she might bring her Hollywood ways with her to Elstree. And he said not a bit of it. She was a pussycat from start to finish. So, but I think she's terrific, and she's got one of the best screen screams since Fay Wray.
She is so good.
She's got a hell of a set of lungs on her. I'll give her that. And she's terrific. And I think she's really good. I think she does the vulnerability of, quote, Penny, and then is able to spin on a sixpence and do the cold vengefulness of Maggie.
That is it.
Brilliantly. Just really good. I think it's a really sort of undersung performance, this one. I think she's great. She's really good.
So I have a bit of a theory. I don't know that it's a particularly hot take or whether there has been other commentary on this, but I am convinced that Penny and Maggie were lesbians because they keep using this word companion.
Companion, yes.
And it just makes me think of when you get... They're sort of described or were described, lesbian lovers who are madly in love and have dedicated their lives to each other.
Sure,
but
yeah.
Pre that kind of being something that is acceptable by the rest of society. They're always like, her companion or her flatmate, all of that kind of thing. These sort of euphemisms that just skirt around the edge of the fact that these women have a very intimate and loving relationship.
Companion was used a lot as a euphemism. I can remember as a kid seeing films and TV shows where they were talking about two women, one of them being the other one's companion. And being the person I am, I thought that meant like Doctor Who's companion. And it made no sense to me until much later on when I grew up and thought, hang on a minute. You can go back to those films again and see them in a different light now because I understand what the euphemism is, yeah.
Her good friend,
That's right, yeah.
But what I think really, apart from just the kind of phrasing and the way that they speak about each other, is exactly what you're touching on there, Kev, about how she plays the vulnerability of Penny so well. And I know that they're meant to have spent so much time together. I know that, they've gotten to know each other very well, but there is something about the intimate way that she is able to convince other people that she is Penny that just makes me think you knew her
extremely well,
better than anybody.
Well, we know thanks to was quite a transgressive writer. Mm-hmm. We've already seen that with the introduction of sex into horror films, which is something that really hadn't been done properly before. I don't know whether in 1961 the world, particularly the tiny little part of the world we live in, was quite ready for open lesbianism. No. Give it a decade, it was all over Hammer. But in 1961, I think they might have been a little bit, so we can't sort of, I'm trying to find the right word here. We can't foreground this.
Mm-hmm, exactly, yeah.
It has to be... but I think it's there. I think you're right. I think you have a point.
I do think it's there. And also, you know, as we've already learned in this episode, you know, you are starting to get the language changing in cinema at this time. You are starting to hear the word homosexual actually spoken on on film. And so I mean, I'm completely convinced of it, and I think that what that also adds is it makes it even more heartbreaking that she's lost her, you know.
Well, thank you, because you've given me the perfect reason to go back and watch it again.
Yay!
So not that I need an excuse, but you've given me the excuse to do now. I have one, but it's a good point. It's not one that I'd considered. Obviously, I guess from a male perspective, I probably wouldn't have noticed that, because, you know, I'm not worldly wise anyway, but I mean, I'm not very good at spotting these things anyway. So, but no, that's interesting.
I think it also explains the lengths that Maggie then goes to.
Yeah.
Because if she was just, you know, a good friend, a companion, you know, like, you could believe it, but you can really believe it if she was in love with her.
I like it. I'm gonna put it on the shelf next to Dr. Gerard being the immortal one from, you know, Man Who Could Cheat Death. I'm going to put them both on the same shelf next to each other. I'm liking it. I'm going to store those together, yes. Actually, I've got this quote about Susan Strasberg and about the film from Ann Todd, and we know she's great in the film. I really like Ann Todd in this film. She's really good.
Brilliant.
She did not like the film.
Oh.
She really didn't like Susan Strasberg.
Oh, my God!
She said in a later interview, "I thought it was a terrible film. I didn't like my part, and I found Susan Strasberg impossible to work with. All that method stuff." Which is amazing when you consider they're working together for quite a good chunk of the film. They're together in the same scenes. Such professionalism to hide that. You know, we hear so many times, don't we, of sort of, you know, big Hollywood feuds where the actors never know about it for many years. But this is a great example of that, you know, that she didn't like her one little bit, but she was such a consummate professional, she never let that show for a second.
I'm genuinely surprised, because one of the things that does come across so much in the film that obviously Jane is playing up, but is able to convey, is that kind of welcoming warmth that she extends to Penny. She says things to her explicitly like, "Oh, did you think that I was going to be, you know, the stereotypical evil stepmother or something?" She isn't. She's very warm, very caring. So yeah, it's like, you know, the character is being convincing in that, but Ann Todd is as well. So maybe
she used it. Maybe she used that as part of her method, as it were, that she didn't like this woman, but she had to pretend that she did.
Yeah.
And so it becomes a kind of like, that's just a tool for the acting, isn't it, really? But whatever. I mean, she's great in the film anyway. We'll forgive her for that. But Anne, wherever you may be, wherever you are on the other side, it's not a terrible film at all. It really isn't. It really isn't.
Do you think that Susan Strasberg was going so method that she, like, wouldn't walk and was getting people to carry her around?
I've often wondered that, to be honest. I've found no evidence of it, but I have actually wondered, did she actually go the whole hog? And sort of some poor stagehand had to pick her up and carry her on and off the set.
Oh no, I'd have Ronald Lewis doing it.
I'm sure you would, but would Ronald Lewis have actually, would he not have just said, "No, get on your bike, we're British, we don't do that nonsense"? So it's a bit like that sort of a bit in Horror Express, isn't it? Monsters, we're English, you know. So the method, we're English, you know. So, like,
absolutely.
You've got a pair of functioning legs. Get up. Wasn't it that quote, wasn't there, from Marathon Man, where it's Laurence Olivier's talking to Dustin Hoffman?
Uh-huh.
And Dustin's talking about the method, and he sort of gives this long sort of explanation of what he's doing. And apparently Laurence Olivier, according to the story, says, "Why don't you just try acting, dear boy?" Yeah. Which I absolutely terrific, really good. And I wonder, you know, I can kind of hear Ronald Lewis saying that. He's saying, "You need to pick me up so I can go off set." You go, "No, get up, you've been acting, go away, go get your own bloody cup of tea. So,
I think, and it sounds like Anne Todd was definitely in the Olivier camp.
Yeah, I think, so the method has its place, but I think a lot of English actors, because they came from the stage, a lot of them, they didn't need all that.
Right.
They just knew how to give a performance.
Classically trained, darling.
Classically trained, darling, absolutely. Been to RADA, don't you know?
Any favourite moments from the film to touch on?
Oh, there are so many of them, aren't there?
Yeah.
We've mentioned several. I love the fact that from the very opening scenes, the answer to the mystery is right there in front of our eyes. Mm-hmm. That is actually Penny they're fishing out of the lake. We don't really see her face properly, but they don't cheat on us. That is actually Penny. Yep. And it's there. I like that there's a long scene near the beginning of Robert driving Penny to the house. And I wonder if that was a tip of the hat to Marion Crane's very long drive in Psycho. Yeah,
and there's also a moment, isn't there, when Penny goes into the pool house and the camera kind of pans around like all the old furniture stuff that's stacked in there. I'm sure it goes past a couple of stuffed birds.
It's all there,
which
isn't
feels
it?
like a nod.
It does indeed. It's all in there. There's a lovely line of dialogue when Penny and Jane are talking at one point. Penny says she's tired, and what appears to be a throwaway mark, Jane replies, "You must be dead." And of course, the second view, we know that Penny really is dead. It's Sangster being brilliant and playing games, and that sort of weird sense of humour of his, And of course, any scene with Fred Johnson as dad, but particularly in the swimming pool, that is just one of the most startling scenes Hammer ever did, I think.
It's got to be the swimming pool for me as my kind of real standout. I just thought... again, the pacing of it is so good. You've got you've got Penny just sort of like looking into the pool, and you think, and she's sort of done that a couple of times during the film, and so you can see her sort of cogs whirring. But then Robert comes into shot, and he's in his Speedos, and you think, right, he's going in, okay. Then he goes in and get these really, really good underwater shots. The pool obviously hasn't been used in a while because it's a bit weedy and stuff. And he comes up. He hasn't seen anything. He says how dark it is down there. She says, "Well, are you sure you really want to do this?" And he doesn't answer. He just sort of takes another breath and goes down. And then that figure of the father sort of just like comes out of the darkness. And this is where, it really looks like that iconic shot from Night of the Hunter, because his hair is kind of moving in the water away from his head. He's got these sort of staring eyes. And there's this sort of like stillness. Also, there's a really beautiful use of kind of score and sound design in this moment, because when Robert first goes under the pool, it's completely silent. So it's like you're under there with him. And then when he goes under the second time, that's when the kind of tense, dramatic music starts, and you think, uh-oh, something's about to happen, So it's just an expertly crafted scene.
Let's be totally honest at this point, shall we, Becky? When you saw your man in his Speedos, you weren't thinking he's going... you were thinking...
I was thinking... Oh, my goodness.
Me. I've come over most peculiar.
I was trying to be very grown up about it, Kev, but as you have mentioned it, yes, I suppose it wasn't the worst thing that happened.
We've been working on this a very long time, and we've known each other a lot longer than that. You should know better than to expect me, of all people, to be grown up.
Well, or for you to expect me to have not been drooling when the bloke in the film that I fancy suddenly turns up in a pair of skimpies and dives into a pool.
Cool. I tell you what, even I'm beginning to get a little bit hot under the collar.
Well, we obviously really love this film for one reason or another.
One reason or another, we adore this film, yes.
What did other audiences think? How did it do commercially for Hammer?
It did very well.
Oh, good.
It did very well. I think they needed a bit of a hit because obviously the sort of Curse of the Werewolf and Shadow of the Cat double bill it did okay, but it didn't do as well as they'd hoped it would do. This was a much more successful film.
Oh, good.
And Jimmy Sangster said, you'd be able to work out the dates of when he said this, he said, even now, after 40 years, it holds up well. It is exciting, suspenseful, scary, and it has more twists than most other films of its type. If that sounds like I'm blowing my own trumpet, I am. And why not? I have little enough to say about most of the movies I wrote and or produced and or directed, and for me, this one stands out.
I love that.
And quite right, Jimmy. Quite right, Jimmy. This is one of those films. I mean, you know, with Dracula stands the test of time. Curse of Frankenstein stands the test of time. He worked on Bride to Dracula, you know. But this one, I think, this is the one that sort of was the most personal to him. The one of their modern dress films that I think stands up well today.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I just think it's so beautifully constructed. Audiences loved it. When it went to the States, a Scream of Fear, it did even better. So, yeah, and that's why they then looked at it and thought, right, OK, let's do more of these.
Yeah.
Let's do a lot more of these.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it is superb. It looks beautiful. And, you know, as we say, as, you know, the man himself, Jimmy Sangster, says, all of the suspense and all of that really stands up.
Yeah.
Even from our cynical viewpoint of 2026, you know?
But it's all down to the fact there is a beautifully constructed script.
Yeah.
Had the script stumbled just once, it wouldn't have worked. But because you've got a writer of Jimmy Sangster's calibre, he just sort of so effortlessly keeps the house of cards up the whole time. It may shake slightly, but it never collapses. And that's what's brilliant about this film.
You have put it perfectly. Well, I think it's time for us to rank it amongst our Hammer films that we've seen so far. Where does this one come for you, Kev?
OK, this is when I reveal the big twist. I'm going to put it in lower. No, I'm not. Of course I'm not.
Oh, no, the ultimate rug pull.
The ultimate rug pull. No, of course it's elite. Of course it's bloody elite. This is right up there with the very best that Hammer ever did.
I completely agree. In fact, I loved this film going into this chat, and you have revealed so much more about it to me that I think I've even put it up half a star on my Letterboxd review from my latest, because I've seen this one twice now, because we had to watch it for something else that we were doing that will be revealed.
Yeah.
But I think it's right up there. What a picture.
It is.
I love it. And this is one that, you know, coming into this podcast, I'd never even heard of. I didn't know it existed.
Right.
And it'll now be one that I recommend to people, like, on the regs. I loved it.
One of the reasons I was looking forward to doing this episode, quite apart from the fact that it is a magnificent film, I knew you'd love this. Mm-hmm. I know you well enough to know that you were going to absolutely adore this film. And I just couldn't wait to get your reaction to it. So it's been fantastic. And if my ramblings have sort of bumped it up half a star, then job done. I can
all the better.
I can go and lie on the sofa feeling sorry for myself with my man flu all afternoon, and I will be fine now. It's all right. All is well with the world.
Get yourself under a blanket and watch the more Red Dwarf and feel better, please. Thanks for listening to Hammer Time. We'll be back next week with our first film from 1962, the Gothic smuggling adventure movie, Captain Clegg. If you're watching along with the podcast, this one's not available to stream at the moment, but you can pick it up on physical media. To check out the full list of movies we'll be covering throughout the podcast, you can head to evolutionofhorror.com/hammer. We'd love to hear from you. And as Kev has just said, especially, I think we'd be interested to hear what people are thinking of this new approach, this new sort of track
new
for
departure
Hammer.
For Hammer, yeah.
Exactly. So let us know what you thought of Taste of Fear. So you can either do that by dropping us an email to hammer@evolutionofhorror.com, or you can leave comments on the Evolution of Horror Network on Instagram, which is EOH_network. Or Kev and I are always posting all over our social medias about our Hammer films as well. So you can follow me on Instagram and Blue Sky @Bunny Darke. And Kev, what are you online under?
EOFFTV, which I don't think I've ever explained, stands for Encyclopedia of Fantastic Film and Television. It's a hell of a mouthful, but EOFFTV to my website. Go EOFFTV.com, but you can find me on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, although I still haven't figured out how Instagram works, and on Blue Sky under all of those all as EOFF TV, and I'm getting a lot of people coming and having a chat on those things, so thank you so much. It really is very nice to keep up with everybody.
Perfect. Don't forget to rate and review us on your podcast app of choice. Thank you for listening, and join us next week for another episode of Hammer Time.